Anyway.
Okay. Well, so one of the things that we run to A-SPEC Forum series for 2025, it's been a pretty epic journey for us. So we started in COVID and have been running this now every year since then. So 7 years, I think George said. But also extra special this year is Gis's 21st birthday. So you might have seen that logo being branded about to showcase and celebrate Gis's 21st. My name, for those who don't know me, is Kelly Island, and I support George with getting these forums together and other ad hoc stuff as required. And we also have Natalie Northey, who does all the event management, and she's from Venues to Events. And, of course, George Havakis, who just likes standards and is the founder and MD of GISA and A-SPEC. So throughout the forum, we will update you all on the things that are happening with B-Spec upcoming and what has happened, what is happening, what will be happening soon. And we also use Menti polls to sort of get some understanding of who the audience is and who's using what things that George is talking about, and also to rate our speakers and the forum. So you'll see us throw up a Menti on the screen every now and then, and we'd love it if you could answer that. And as to start you off in the chat is a link to our Menti slides. And so that should take you, I'll pop it back in again, into our slide deck. And then when we ask you to do a Menti, it will appear there, is my theory. So if you click on that, you can maybe do a test. We've got a couple of test questions. And if you could submit your answer, that would be great. And I can see the answers live, but I can also share with you the answers as well. So the first one, we were just talking about AI for those who just arrived, and we were just trying to pick the brains of our audience to find out how they were using AI and what some good prompts were. And then we will go to our other questions as we move forward. Does anyone have any problems accessing the Menti?
I think silence is golden.
Silence means they're all good. So we've got answers. How many people do we have on the call, George? We've got 19, so we've got another anyway, so 15 answers to go, but I'll let you warm up to it. So the next one, Menti's up, and we want to know where you're joining us from. So I'm in Brunswick. We just like to get a bit of feel for where our people are in the audience. So if you could just pop in the suburb that you're sitting in, that would be really great. Ballarat. And I'm going to share my screen so we can all see. So you can see we've got some people from all over the place. WA. Melbourne. Generic. So you all obviously seem to have the hang of it so far. So I'll go to the next slide. And this is really so we can gain, in my opinion, black coffee means get up and get on with it. Latte and flat white is slowly. Juice is a bit of my body's my temple, and tea is a little bit refined and posh.
That's me, Kelly, just if you didn't know.
Hardly. Except for George. Except in the case of George, and then it's like a bit hit and miss. But anyway. There's also a QR code there if you find that easier than the link, but I think the link seems to be working for everyone, which is great. And then for George's sake, can we please say who we are, what we do for a living, a surveyor, working for a council, a developer, a contractor, or other? Other's an interesting one. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If we can get a few more answers, that'd be really good. Lots of council workers here, which is good. And then we'll quickly go to the next one. If you're all finished answering that question, maybe there's actually 4 of you who probably answer. Thank you. Next one. This is really important as well because this will help George tailor his messaging and also help us tailor ongoing messaging. If you could let us know what your general knowledge is of A-SPEC. Got an expert, is that you, George?
Possibly. But just boosting the stats, Kelly. Oh, we've got
You're
2
skewing
experts.
the numbers.
Well, we've got a couple of experts there, so that's okay.
That other one was me.
Oh.
No, not really.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything about it.
Yeah, so it's really good, as I said, if you could just quickly answer this question because we'd love to know where you're at with your knowledge and perhaps, I mean, last year I when we ran the forum and George was holidaying in Greece, I was able to draw on my experts to assist me with answering some of the questions that were coming through, which was really good as well. Okay, we'll just move on to the next slide. And we don't have to answer that just yet because this is now George who will move into his presentation and sharing his screen again.
Okay. Thanks, Kelly. And good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. Well, in terms of who's logged in, I can't see your faces just for the moment. So as Kelly mentioned, my name's George Havakis, and I'll be leading the forum today, supported by Kelly. And so what you can expect today is I'll go through some of the key things that we're addressing in B-Spec. I've also got a little section about guidance with B-Spec, and for people who are thinking about B-Spec, where do we start? What do we capture? Our community, then we'll move on to our community experience, and we've got 2 guests from the city of Karratha to talk about their experience with A-SPEC and in particular B-Spec as they're currently implementing B-Spec at the city, along with implementing it, configuring their Tech 1 environment. And then we'll talk about what's next and where to from now. Professional learning, we've currently confirmed that the Licensed Surveyors Board in WA has agreed to 1 general education point for people attending. We'll once we confirm the other organisations, we'll communicate that through you, and you'll get a communication probably from Natalie or from GISA. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a recap, and I think this is really important around the DDS versus existing. And what I mean by that is that if you're not aware, we actually have 2 versions of every specification. And one is, and so the purpose of them is that the DDS focuses on new assets and the existing focuses on assets already built, typically pre-A-SPEC. For example, if you're going to do a backlog or additional field capture to verify your inventory, possibly prior to valuations. One of the things that we're seeing is a greater uptake of B-Spec in capital works projects. And as a result of that, we're seeing that there are consultants who require more training and more support. And I'll talk a bit about that. For those familiar with our specifications, when you go into one of the tables, and this is for a DDS version, and I'm showing specifically for B-Spec, that you'll be familiar with this table. When you look at the existing specification, there is an extra column, and the extra column is where we've categorized each of the attributes to look at whether it's an optional requirement or a core requirement. More often than not, we see that most of the values are core requirements, but the way that we've looked at it is, what can somebody going out into the field identify about that asset? And that makes it simpler in terms of, you may have all of these fields configured in your asset management and GIS environments. However, we know that there are certain attribute values that cannot be populated in the field. So for example, you can't easily see the kind of insulation inside behind plaster walls or behind brickwork, that sort of thing, without doing some additional research. Whereas other things around the foundations, you won't necessarily know. You'll know the type of foundations, but you may not necessarily know the kind of material of the foundations. So we've looked at it for every single attribute in every table, in every specification. Now, when it comes to starting off with looking at your specification, looking at B-Spec, you'll notice that when you go into B-Spec in section 1.3, you'll have this table. And I just want to briefly explain what is in this table. So of course we have the asset name, the asset type. Then we have the file name. So that's the digital file that's to be provided. And then the data type, the description, fairly straightforward. That is all consistent amongst all of the specifications. There are two columns there, and the last column, the attribute table, indicates whether there's attributes or not. Now, there are two columns there, the IPWEA importance rating and the essential safety measures feature. And we're currently working with two councils in WA, City of Karratha and the town of Port Hedland, around how to implement B-Spec and what to look for. And part of the conversation today that you'll hear with our two guests from City of Karratha is how they've approached it. But I thought I would give you an overview of the kind of guidance that we're providing, along with what we're seeing that the councils are taking on. Now, we know that when there is a new building, there's a greater opportunity to capture all the attributes. So that's really a given, right? However, what's really important is that every organization that we've dealt with is coming from a base of, we've already got these assets, but we don't know very much about them, and we get these valuations. So what is it that we need to capture, and what should we set up in our corporate systems, in terms of our components? So what we talk about is the importance rating. So this importance rating you can find in the IPWEA's building practice note number 3. and it's linked to building criticality and other elements around determining condition and so on. Now there's a 1 to 5, with 5 being high importance, and I'll show you a table in a moment to give you a sense of what they classify as high importance versus low importance. So the way that we've configured this table is that whether it's low importance of rating 1 or high importance of rating 5, it's important to have a building footprint, because then you know exactly where your asset is. And you can do a reconciliation to make sure that if you have, in the case of City of Karratha, 260 buildings, then have you got, or structures, have you got a building footprint that represents each one of them? And then you can see that depending on the importance level of the building will determine whether you capture communication and data points or conveyance paths, etc., etc. So that's how we've structured the IPWE importance rating. The essential safety measures are another element completely separate, comes back to the safety audits that are done on buildings. And again, what we've looked at is, what do you want to capture geographically, so it's easier to identify where those features are? And you can see that not every requirement, not every category is there for that requirement. So so we have the building space. Important there that the building space is identified, because then the person doing the audit knows which space they're going into, and they're not just relying something on written form. That's if you want to go to this level to incorporate it into your GIS environment to visualize where your assets are. So they're the two critical fields. Along with that, it then comes back to your asset hierarchy, your level of maturity with your asset management requirements, and this will drive what you do with your existing assets in terms of the capture of your existing assets. Now, the table on the right-hand side is the importance rating. So you can see what is classified from low to high, and what you need to capture. What we've identified is a requirement to capture. So if there is a sewage pumping station in terms of some kind of structure there, unmanned depot, so typically the unmanned environments have a medium rating, but still, according to our table, have a requirement to capture things like communication and data points, conveyance pathways, etc., etc. So I've broken this down further, and I had a look at, well, what are the components that typically are part of building valuations? And I'm happy for others to put into the chat the kind of valuations, the kind of components that you include. So don't hesitate to just jot it into the chat for us. From our research, we've identified that these are the components that are being used, and this is what the valuers are coming back to the councils who are requesting the valuations to be done to say, here's what we're looking at. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that those elements are going to tie in exactly with what you have in your asset management environment, whether it's your physical asset register or your financial asset register, but it gives you an indication of what components you're going to get back that have got values on it. So Town of Port Hedland, for example, everything that is on here that identifies as service is all put under service. So that way they don't need to know from their perspective what the individual components are. They'll leave that up to the asset management team to determine. From a finance perspective, they just summarize it. Now, I've gone a bit further and then had a look at, well, if we're looking at substructure, what does that typically include? And I can't tell you if this is common across all areas, but this is from the research that I've done from dealing with our current clients. And then I've had a look at it. Well, if you're taking on B-Spec, then where are you likely to get information that represents the substructure? Okay, so for example, foundations. The building footprint will tell you the kind of foundation. It won't tell you the location of the foundations. If you want the location of the foundations, then you may need to do more research and go back to the original architectural drawings and the plans issued for construction to look at that. The same thing around load-bearing walls. The specs won't identify where those load-bearing walls are, but it'll identify the kind of frameworks that are there. What we're seeing is with the advent of products like Revit for more complex designs, then all of that information will be in there, and you'll have a data-rich environment that you can then pull out and incorporate into your asset management environment if you want to collect the individual components. Again, it comes down to what you want to componentize, your level of maturity, and then what level of sophistication you want to have around your analytics for looking at your renewal programs, etc. Now, Kelly, is there? So we've got a Mentimeter question here that I'd like everybody to have a look at. Is there a requirement for a subset specifically for valuations? And the reason we're asking that is that whilst we have the DDS version and the existing version, we think it may actually be valuable to have a subset to say, if you're just going out for valuations, then what kind of level of detail do you want to capture about those assets? Not just the value of them, but specifically where they might be. So I'll just give you 30 seconds to a minute to respond to that.
And I'll just share the screen so you can see the responses as well. So they're coming through. So we've got a few. It'd be good to have a few more.
Yeah, look, this is really good. Thank you for responding to it. And Graham, you've got externals there. Can you, while people are completing this, can you just say a bit more about that, please? You're on mute if you are talking.
That's better. Yeah, so I'm just going through one of the last major buildings that we componentized and popped into the system, and one of the components is called externals. And I'm just opening it up now, and it's let's have a look. So interestingly, and flowing on to the poll that we just did, these components were never came through properly when the building was completed and all the documentation came through. So there was a third party that went through and componentized the building and did the valuation. So when you're talking about adding value, having a specific valuation version, that, yeah, I did. I clicked yes. So it's some of the externals related to the library. So there's a library section of that particular complex, and yeah, so it's called externals for some reason. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that everything, all the other component, all the other parts that you listed are exactly what we use internally when we're componentizing the building.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for speaking up. We also have a number of comments around need more information. Would anybody like to pop into the chat the kind of extra information that you need around this request, or feel free to take yourself off mute and talk about it. Either way is fine. And I'll pop myself back to share. Okay, Kelly, just keep a lookout for in the chat to see if people type anything in there for us to refer to. Great. Okay. Now, I'll come back to buildings in a moment with some of the FAQs. However, I want to cover off some of the other things that we've been doing. And look, we're always looking for continuous improvement, and it goes to anomalies. So earlier this year, we sent out, actually not earlier this year, last year, we sent out a communication to everybody with a list of some of the anomalies that we found. Some of them were minor, and I'll give you some examples, and some of them are important and impactful to delivery. So I'll give you those examples as well. We've updated the sample data, and that will be available by the end of this forum series. So we're talking by the end of August. We're continually updating codes and code lists and looking at how we can transition from GISA being responsible for generating the codes to the community crowdsourcing those codes. And I'll show you what I mean about that. We talked about a code list API and mobile app. We've had to reconfigure it because we've moved platform and it's taking longer than we anticipated. And we apologize for that, but it's still a work in progress. So I'll keep you posted via email on that. Created a code generator using Claude AI. So this comes back to the crowdsourcing element. So I had a little bit of fun not being a coder. Didn't really know what I was doing. So thankfully, Claude helped me out. And then ongoing research on data governance and impacts. So firstly, these are the kind of things that we look at as being minor or important. So at the top, you can see that we get quite a bit of feedback from our community. And in this particular case, we got quite a bit of feedback from OpenSpatial because they look at using what is in the example to make sure it's part of the code list, right? So what we found was that it was inconsistent with what was in the code list. So we've made those changes there. So that doesn't impact the deliverable because the details were correct. Particularly the bottom one where we talk about source in the minor. We had a typo there where we put combo_1 where it's actually meant to be COMB_1. However, more importantly, where we've got in those two examples, we've got a plumbing layer, but we didn't actually identify which plumbing system was on that plumbing layer. So we could have all of this line work, but we couldn't differentiate what was, whether it was cold water, hot water, etc., etc. So now we've included that as an attribute in that plumbing table. And also we missed off on this particular table in in the sign table in the buildings area, we missed off identifying which code list that the support material would come from. So they're the kind of things that we're always looking at, and we know we don't always get it 100% complete. So we're really grateful that people identify these things. It doesn't matter whether you think it might be minor or not. Please communicate it to us. It's really appreciated. Now I'm going to give you a little break from me being live, and I'll give you a couple of minutes of me being recorded. So I'm going to start this video. Please let me know if you can't hear it, or Kelly, let me know if you can hear it. Maybe a thumbs up. The purpose of this clip is to give you a snapshot into what we're looking at for crowdsourcing the creation of codes. As you know, C comment is one of the valid entries. We want to remove it. In doing that, we also want to give the community an opportunity to create the codes when they need them. So this is how it would work. You search for a code list. I've selected my code list. I'm looking at all of the different options that are available. And I can't find it. So I'm going to search something in there. Vegetable plantings. Vegetable plantings doesn't exist. By selecting this, it automatically reads the description and at the same time gives me a couple of options. I'm going to pick one of them, and it's based on this criteria highlighted below. I pick one of them. I put in my username or user ID, and this is so that we can have an indication of where the activity is coming from. And we add a code to a code list. We continue. I now have the option to add more. I'm going to select make more changes. I go back to the start. I'm going to search for a different code, access point material. I'm looking through my access point material to see what is there, and I'm going to reinforced concrete, and by typing that in, I can see all of the options that I've got for reinforced concrete. I know that RC already exists, so I'm going to select RC1. This automatically adds it to the code list. I now see all of the changes. Satisfied with that, I send an email notification to GISA. GISA receives an email with these changes. I send the email. The session's complete. Okay, so as I mentioned, our objective is to remove C comment as an entry. Now, we know it'll take time, and we also know that something like this will take time for its uptake. But you don't have to worry about adopting it straight away, because we're in the prototype phase right now. We're talking with our web provider tomorrow about incorporating that code into our website, so you can access it when you go to the A-SPEC website. You won't need a login. We've always made our codes available, and the benefit of that is that we can have lots of people use it, lots of suggestions. Okay, governance, we always reinforce this under a couple of areas, data and process. As you know, A-SPEC is essentially a filter for data on the way through into the asset management and GIS environments. It's system agnostic, data model agnostic, classification system agnostic. So this is our view of the world. And in fact, this is our digital twin. Now, when we, there's another poll here about have you used this checklist. If please skip ahead to the checklist. Don't worry about sharing at the moment, Kelly. I'm not sure if you've got a question on this one or not, but anyway, aside from that, one of the things that we're looking at is we've got a number of projects that we're implementing A-SPEC with. And one of the important aspects is to look at the existing workflows to identify when the A-SPEC requirement is requested and what is requested. So we're reinforcing this and advocating that it's a great way to identify exactly what asset data is expected at practical completion. Not necessarily, it is part of the handover process, but we advocate that this data is provided at practical completion. And you may be aware that checklists can be found online. Now, when you have a look at this, it's got every asset type covered, and there's also an area to sign off. So it can actually form part of your project management framework or part of your checklist for your handover for gifted assets. So here's an example of a checklist we requested from a client identifying the assets that they wanted us to do capture on so they could deliver it to their client. So this is valuable in a number of areas. So we don't want to leave things to chance and take a risk on not identifying something on the plans. So we ask our clients to complete this. And it has a couple of purposes. One, I mentioned, save us interpreting the plans. Secondly, see if they've identified assets that will not be required for the asset owner. So sometimes they'll identify electrical cabling for S&W spec, but we know that this particular council doesn't subscribe to S&W spec. So it gives us an opportunity to go back to them and say, what are you actually talking about? Are you actually talking about services as part of a building, or are you talking about services that are wastewater and water features? So our tip, inspect versus expect. Now, when it comes to precincts, in this particular case, this is actually a job that we completed from Utilise, and part of it was the delivery of that checklist. Now, when we're in discussion with the contractor, we always ask them about, well, is it part of a precinct? If it is, then what else needs to be captured as part of that project and who's responsible for it? So you can see in this particular case, there's some building works. There's over on the left here is car parking and landscaping features. So quite a complex site, but it's fairly typical of what you can expect in a precinct or a compound. And, you know, are you as asset owners capturing your assets that are part of a precinct or a compound? So drilling down into the level of detail, you can see that in this particular case, we've captured the all the spaces. They're all labelled so that the asset owner knows the purpose of those particular spaces, all in accordance with B-Spec. You can also see, I'll zoom in a bit here, you can also see that we've added the location of doors and windows, so that will form part of the valuation. From a finance perspective, they're happy to know the total number of doors or the total number of windows, but they don't specifically want to know where they are. From an asset management perspective and facilities management perspective, the council officers know exactly where those assets are, because they not only want to know what kind of windows and doors are there, but they also want to know the hardware on them. And it gives them an opportunity to rationalize the kind of hardware that they keep for spare parts. And we've seen this with other councils where they have started to standardize the hardware across all of their windows and doors, across all of their assets, to minimize the kind of spare parts that they need to keep. Fairly interesting approach to facilities management. Now, frequently asked questions. I'm new to B-Spec, and a couple of people earlier on said we're interested in how we could apply B-Spec. Well, there is a particular process that we would take you down, and it's around registering on the website to get access. If you're a consultant, sign a non-disclosure agreement form. If you're already a client, you've already undertaken that approach. Download the A-SPEC material, refer to the development application or contract for A-SPEC requirements. Again, this is both for, so it's a dual-edged sword. It's to be used as a guide for asset owners as well as the consultants. So it starts with requesting access. I put the QR code there. So if you are interested, you can just click on that QR code and it will take you to the contact page on the A-SPEC website, and then you can fill in the form. You'll get to this form, complete it, and put in your request to about B-Spec. In fact, if you have any request about A-SPEC, it's the same kind of process. Whether you're a consultant or an asset owner, it's good to know about this particular document, and I'll be reinforcing it in all our forums. Because what we find is that reinforcing it really is about repeating what those requirements are, so that people understand that it's not just another document, but there's a particular purpose to this document. And the purpose, and a couple of things that I'm going to show you, which are really quite critical in this document, is that there's responsibility of the developer or consultant. So we've outlined this. So if you are a particular, there's specific area responsibilities depending on the jurisdiction, applicable both for the consultant and the contractor. So, consultant and the council, or the asset owner. Yes.
Could you please just have a quick view at?
Are you gone on mute, Kelly?
Sorry, I'm Trevor King provided a comment and a question in the chat. If you want to just go over that.
Yep. Thanks, Trevor. I'll deal with the first. How long will it take to get approval? It doesn't need to be ratified. You don't need to get approval from us, because we're building the tool to make sure that there isn't a duplicate feature within the code list. So you'll be able to use it straight away. For those that are using validation processes, we'll be working to make sure that that is available as soon as that change occurs. Will this stop the approval process? I don't think so. If the validation fails, we don't have the time to wait for the approval. Understand? So we'll make sure that this particular process does not hold up your approval for whatever reason. one of the key things which I will show you on the next slide, Trevor, and I will do that, is this note at the bottom. So whilst we talk about acceptance, it's also about at a time that's agreed to with the consultant. So we get that there are time delays from when PC may occur to when the data is actually provided. So we always advocate that or as otherwise agreed to with the consultant. So there's this line here, processing the data in a timely manner in accordance with the A-SPEC, specified timeframes, or as otherwise arranged with the consultant. That has been in there for a long time. So as a consultant, you can have that conversation. Yep, and I get it. Everybody wants it yesterday. So use this. Every council has signed up to this. Reinforce that requirement is there, and actually have your client have that conversation as early as you can, is my suggestion. Now, we also want people to become familiar with this table, because again, if you're starting off doing a data capture exercise or evaluation exercise, you can identify what level of detail is going to be involved by seeing where this will take you to, and then also the level of detail. What kind of survey do I need to do? We always advocate that you need to understand what the requirements are. So in this particular case, we've got that what needs to be captured in the field versus what can be captured in the office, and also look at the conditional fields. So what I've identified is typically this kind of detail, once you start getting into the table of information, then you can see what you need to verify in the field. So for example, if we come down to the fitting type, yes, it may be identified as a desk. So, and you'll probably already have the details about the manufacturer and model number as a desktop exercise. So in the field, you would verify that the type of desk that was actually specified from that manufacturer was actually provided. So that's how you can mix up what you need to capture in the field. Of course, it changes when you're talking about civil assets to these built assets. So we're not going to tell you how to do it. You know very well what kind of detail needs to be picked up and the level of accuracy. It's then about making sure that you put your own process in place to streamline your approach. So other activities, Digital Hive is a joint venture that or partnership that I've created with Gabby Van Vaek, and he's the lead in this area. So we undertake projects, so more technical projects like gap analysis, comparisons between, your asset management data model and developing A-SPEC warehouses and the like. We have, this is the certification form. We're advocating that the certification form be provided with every project. Because down here you'll see spatial reference ID. The GDV Hub, for example, has built in that it searches for this spatial reference ID to ensure that the data provided is actually in that area. So it's important. Plus the tolerances. If you're recording the tolerances, then, if you're recording, if you're providing a tolerance report, which is what this is, it actually shows the changes that have occurred at construction. So what we mean by that is, in that particular example, in the ASCON, it shows 4 WCs, in the design, it shows 3 WCs. So this, combined with what the construction supervisor and project managers are monitoring, will go towards ensuring that the data provided reflects what has actually been built. Well, I've spoken a lot about data validation and correction. This is our joint venture with One Spatial and the Digital Hive entity. So feel free, if you want to know more about it, click on that QR code, and you can find out more information about it. So we are now at the stage that I've completed my update for you. If you have any questions, got a couple of minutes before we do our intro for our fireside chat. There's a number of Menti presentations, Menti slides that Kelly has put up. So please feel free to complete that.
Sorry, George, just to quickly interrupt. We just wanted to get a feel for who had used the checklist that you talked about.
Okay, great. Yep.
If we could answer that question, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I'm seeing that no one has responded that they've used the checklist. Understandable. It's optional. It's a guide. The A-SPEC implementations that we're doing now, and there's 7 of them that we're doing now. We're advocating that the checklist is used during the subdivision development assessment process or application process, as well as the capital works process. So from the development application process, we encourage that the councils or the asset owner lets the consultant know that there's a checklist for them to identify what assets are being proposed. It's not the number of assets, it's the type of assets, and that becomes a live document. From the capital works perspective, we're tying it in with project management frameworks so that it becomes part of the gated approach that the asset owner has. And also that then becomes a joint responsibility between the council starting it and the consultant completing it, so that when at practical completion, the checklist is provided along with the ASCONs and any other material, so that the team validating and verifying the data can essentially do a desktop exercise rather than having a concern about needing to go out in the field and don't have resources, etc.
Okay, thanks, George. I'll just quickly go to the other one that we were talking, hoping to get some information on was are asset owners recording what assets exist in their precincts or compounds?
Yep, great.
And if you wanted to, George, take this opportunity to re-download the SharePoint PowerPoint, the Mentis are now all in there, so you should be able to just present from your screen as well.
Okay, I will. I'll see how I go.
Tech quiz.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to have some more more people respond to this slide with this Menti, because it's really good for George to have that information. We've got 3 responses, so maybe there's only 3 of you who are recording assets.
Yep.
5. And lastly, just before I move off this slide, I have a couple of questions around rating our presenters. So I'm going to ask you, whilst you're answering this question, to have a quick think about what George spoke about and what you think of his lovely, engaging presentation. And if you could rate him anonymously. There's a hand. Melissa Butler, you have a question? Just take yourself off mute, Melissa, and ask your question. Or do I need to take you off mute? No, you need to take yourself off mute, Melissa, and ask your question if you can. Okay, maybe you put your hand up in error. So we'll go to the next Mentee. And this is just quickly, if you could rate George's presentation, that would be great. And it's anonymous, so we don't know what you're saying. If you think 5 stars being great, 1 star being not as great. Are you rating yourself, George?
I have declined, Kelly.
So yeah, if you could all please just quickly rate that, that'll be great. 3 people rate you, which is pretty good.
Okay, cool. Well, that'll still be up for people. What we might do is, while people are doing that, we will go on to our next session, Kelly, which is.
Yeah, and if you'd like to share your screen, George.
I shall do that.
Fantastic.
And if we could have Ben and Joe turn their cameras on, that would be fabulous.
We're here.
Oh, look at that. Oh, okay, even better. Thank you. The dynamic duo.
Had some technical difficulties as always.
Yeah, no, it's great. So, look, this is a new session, a new session that we're attempting or exploring a different approach of how we can have a conversation, take the pressure off people feeling that they have to spend hours and hours on their presentations because it's got to hit the mark. So what we're doing this year is having a number of conversations, and this is our first one. So you guys are the guinea pigs. So we get to explore with you and set the scene for everybody following you. So maybe I'll just start by both of you just telling us a little bit about yourselves and your and then the area that you're each working.
Go first.
Sure.
I'm Jo. I'm the Senior Asset Accounting Officer at the City of Karratha. I've worked in local government for the last 19 years, both in WA and Northern Territories. I'm quite familiar with A-SPEC, having implemented it across various councils within WA. My focus is basically asset management, finance, and I'm the subject matter expert for our Technology One CIA implementation at the city.
I'm Ben Bays, also at the City of Karratha. I'm the systems analyst here. I'm assigned to the Enterprise Assets Module rollout here. I've been in local government for about 1.5 years, so slightly newer. I've been in the asset management space for a year or so as well, and only really recently exposed to A-SPEC myself, and yeah, just assisting Joe with the setup here. A very useful resource for us.
Yeah, that's great. So really appreciate you both taking this on. Now we're in the B-Spec mindset. Actually, I'll put my camera on as well. There we go. So we're in the B-Spec mindset. So tell us a bit about your asset management environment at Karratha and the kind of improvements that the council is looking to undertake?
So asset management and finance are combined in one team, and we sit under the corporate and commercial directorate. We're at this stage, we're implementing Technology One CIA. And as part of that scope of works, we've adopted the A-SPEC specification, as we need a data management framework, something that's consistent so we can report on our asset data consistently and accurately. We're going through a full data cleanse of our data to align to A-SPEC. We're also configuring CIA in line with A-SPEC as well. So when we do start receiving the as constructed data from consultants, we can just easily import that, migrate it into CIA. Yeah, and yourself, George, you've been out and held some interviews and workshops. We're just looking at our processes at the moment and developing some process flowcharts. And that looks at project initiation, when we need to receive those ASCONs, basically at PC stage. And then it takes us through to the build and construction phase as well, and then sign off and completion, just to make sure that we do get the correct data at the end of the project. Anything you can add?
All right, that was pretty thorough.
Yeah, I thought we had some pretty good contributions from those workshops that we ran.
Yeah.
But particularly from the PM side of things. We can certainly see where the likely pushback is going to be.
Yeah.
And so it's always good. I figure it's always good to bring that up, up front, and then people aren't concerned about it because it's out of their space, and we can deal with it as a community. So that was really good. So you've started with buildings. So can one of you say a little bit more about why buildings first?
Sure, I can speak to it. From our area as well, I mean, there's probably two reasons. From our perspective, it's easier to get buildings in. We also had a soft go live approach here at Karratha. So initially the ERP team released the buildings data, but as Joe kind of spoke to earlier, it wasn't in the best state because of just previous kind of legacy data issues. So we kind of had to go down that path again to support the teams that are already there. So implementing B-Spec again gives us that solid structure. We know what kind of data to expect for buildings. So we're focusing on the building footprints at the moment. Large part of that has been like a spatial data review. We need to know where those buildings are for the teams to do work on them. And typically they're probably are quite high value assets as well. So very important. Joe's done a lot of work with the building maintenance team to kind of assign importance ratings to these buildings to kind of to figure out how much data we need to capture for each of these buildings as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely a challenging one, but there's a lot of value to be gained, I think, by doing buildings first.
Yeah, we're also going through a building revaluation as well at the moment. So having those footprints in place and providing that detail to the valuer is really helpful. When we developed the request for quotes, we didn't have importance ratings at that stage, so we won't be picking the level of detail up in this round of revals, but we'll definitely consider it for the next round. So we do get some more granular data.
Right. Did you do anything special to capture your footprints, or just on-screen digitizing, or?
Yeah, it was pretty much on-screen digitizing, and we did measure like the roof space and the floor areas as well, just to give some more data to the valuers to work with. So yeah, it was all done via desktop.
Okay, cool. I won't ask you how long that took because it's all relative. Depends what other priorities are there. Any tips that you can provide to other councils who are going to embark on this around, where their starting point might be?
Are you talking in terms of implementing like technology one, or just like?
Yes, technology
Yeah.
one. Yes.
Yeah, so I'd definitely ensure that you've got a dedicated ERP team with the appropriate resources to resource the implementation, because it's the scale of the project is large. Start with the simpler asset classes as well. Get the simple assets in, and leave the more complex ones till the end. Familiarize yourself with the import process as well, because that's
a lot of pitfalls there.
Yeah. And if you can go live at once with all asset classes, like we did a soft go live with buildings. This was prior to our time, and it's not worked out for us. So now Ben and I have been tasked with now getting that correct, especially for the building maintenance team.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's pretty good advice. Now, Joe, you've been at a few councils, and you actually set up that Tech One user group some time ago. Are you plugged back into that with Karratha now, or?
No, we haven't looked at that here yet, although you have reached out to us and given us contacts from Port Hedland,
Yep.
But we haven't touched base with them as yet. But it's definitely something worth considering.
Yes, they're very keen. I was in discussion with Port Hedland last week, and they're very happy to look at it as a regional approach, and probably Geraldton as well.
Okay.
So you're all about the same sort of level with where you want to be with Tech One and also A-SPEC. Geraldton's probably a little bit more advanced, I'd imagine. Yes.
Yeah, I believe they embarked on their journey a couple of years ago, Geraldton.
Yeah. Yes. I think they're still going. Now, and you've probably dealt with a number of auditors now, and you told me the other day that you generally had a pretty good experience. Have you noticed a shift in their approach at all, or what they want to focus on?
I think you were saying before, there's a bit more of a focus on the asset management perspective now.
Yeah.
And actually looking at spatial.
Yeah, that's right. They want the asset register and the spatial data to align, that's for sure. They want photographs of the works that have been undertaken. They want appropriate handover forms and disposal forms, because they ask for that information. Evidence of useful lives, evidence of where unit costs have been derived from. They also touched on, in one council where I worked, was they wanted to know what condition assessment manuals we were using, what we were referring to when we were undertaking our inspections. So we had to provide that evidence for them. Ongoing rolling revaluation programs. We need to make sure that we've got them in place. That's it, really.
So we get to experience that here. We obviously audit processes are starting to take shape now. So we'll see if if any of that gets introduced here.
Yeah, we've got the auditors coming in October, so yeah, we'll see what comes of that.
Could be a shocker.
I'll cross my fingers for you. I don't know about WA, but in Victoria, New South Wales, and also New Zealand, I've noticed the auditors are actually naming and shaming councils. Have you had that occur in WA yet?
I think there's a report that goes out annually. So if you do get qualified audits, then the council's name's within that report.
Yep.
So yeah, they do that.
Yes, interesting. Okay, well, we're planning that you do not end up on that report.
Definitely.
Please.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned about starting off with the simpler assets, and that's why you picked buildings, which is great. So you're going to go to A-SPEC to open space assets next.
Yeah.
So what's the sort of likely time frame for O-SPEC and then R and then, or, roads and then drainage? So what are you anticipating your overall roadmap is going to look like?
At this stage, do you want to sort that?
The goalpost keeps changing. I'm sure Joe's going to speak to it. Just in the building space, I mean, scope creep, I suppose, just keeps coming in, and so much of our project is dependent on having the right people available, and obviously people need holiday, people get sick, and I think as well for us, Joe kind of touched on it, but the state of our data beforehand was quite shocking. So to get it up to a level where we can actually get it into CIA, it's taken us a while. We're about to get our footprints into a test environment probably this week. And then we can start to fill in some of the other kind of assets that sit around the B-Spec space at a later date. I think the project as a whole, I think we've got mapped out until like August next year, and even that, I'd imagine, it's probably quite ambitious. So O-SPEC, I imagine once these footprints are in and we can get the asset books in, ideally we do that before our revaluation comes in at the end of the year. So hopefully we'll be in a good space with the buildings probably by late August, late September, and then we could look at starting to get some of those O-SPEC assets in as well. And we will need to. We've got quite an interesting setup here in terms of what assets our teams are working on. So our building maintenance team here isn't just responsible for buildings; they're actually responsible for a lot of amenities such as barbecues, even like weather shelters. So we will need to get those assets in for them to do work orders and perform their functions. So it's definitely something that we'll be closely following.
Because you've also got the airport and caravan parks.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and for now we're kind of putting them in a bit of a bucket. So we've got some assets that we don't have covered in A-SPEC at the moment. So things like our land, and that we kind of just got a separate kind of config sheet for, very bare, because we haven't got a data specification for them. So we'll be looking to you, George, to give us some pointers maybe on what data to capture for those. But for now we've got a place for them. Thanks
for the plug. Appreciate it. It's really good. It's the airport one will be an interesting one. A runway's a road, so and a building's a building. So we'll see how we get on with identifying those assets. So aside from that, so you think you've got a timeline by end of August next year? So that means we could bring you on 12 months from today. And you could give us an update.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Well, we've got to have a bit of fun. It's not that dry a subject, but it is important. Is there anything else that either of you wanted to mention? Any tricks and traps for young players that you've thought of or come across?
Definitely from a CIA perspective, we're having a lot of, I'd say trouble. We're getting past it, but something really fresh as of yesterday, just to generate import sheets for CIA is very difficult. I've come across many kind of import sheets in my time, and typically they're just flat files, right? So CSVs, kind of one line of headers, all your data underneath. CIA has a very, very interesting approach where you've got this kind of multi-level kind of configuration within these flat files, and they're really difficult. And I've actually had to use AI tools to generate and kind of prompt it just to kind of to generate it in the format I want, because you haven't got a tool here. So we've heard some of the other players in the industry using tools such as FME to kind of produce these config files. So it's definitely something we might investigate. For now, I've done okay to generate a consistent building footprint import, but it wasn't too bad for us because we only had, say, I think 286 building footprints to go in. But you know, some of our other asset classes are enormous. You know, we're in the thousands, and each time, you know, you run these language models, it gets trickier and trickier the more you kind of overload it. And they really do kind of hallucinate the Senate Joan. They emit values such as NA, always tries to get rid of it because to the AI, that's a null, you know, doesn't want to put it in, but I need it there because CIA needs a value to go in. So, yeah, definitely something you need to look at if you're trying to do large scale imports or large data migration projects into CIA.
Yeah.
Cool. That's really valuable advice. You know, we Tech One, there's so many organizations implementing Tech One. I'm endeavoring to get a former Tech One employee on in one of the other forums to talk about the spatial side. So watch this space. That seems to be evolving. Haven't fully got my head around that, but always open to other people's views around that. Anything else?
I don't think so.
So you spoke
Cool.
to spatial before.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, it's been great. It's not been that long since I saw you both face to face. So really appreciate you coming on and participating in this. This is, I like to have these fireside chats. Wasn't sure how it would come about, but we'll find out from our community to see their comments on it. But thank you for your contributions and your participation, and I'll let you go now.
Thank you
No
for having us.
worries. Thanks a lot, George.
Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you
Okay.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so so that was the first of a few fireside chats that we're going to have during these forums. Oh, here we go. Bring the power of Menti. Okay.
Or you could just click on the Menti PowerPoint and you'll be able to rate that presentation or this fireside chat as well.
Yes. Yeah, great. Thank you, Kelly, for organising that. Okay. So the wrap up and what's next. We are continuing to crowdsource our codes, and Trevor, I may not have answered everything and you may have follow-up questions. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Happy to have an offline chat or take yourself off mute once we finish, and because I'll be sticking around for about another 15 minutes. As I mentioned, the API is under construction. We continuous improvement, A-SPEC, and the format for the forums, right? So A-SPEC, we've been talking about what to expect from A-SPEC, and we're in a draft stage at the moment. We're focusing on flammable, combustible, liquid containers, and this is so here's a snapshot of it. Nobody else has seen it. You folk are the first ones to see it. So we're looking at things like what are the kind of guides available for separation distances, to buildings or to boundary fences. So we're looking at some of that compliance requirement. So there's as you can see, there's a particular standard that outlines that. So all we're going to do is we're going to replicate that into this document to make you aware of it. So we'll look at other things. Some of the attributes that you can see there that we're starting to create a fairly generic attributes. The lining, coating, manufacturer model, etc. We're looking at things like pressure relief. So if you have combustible containers, particularly combustible liquid containers or tanks, particularly at your depots, please let us know the kind of things that you are looking to capture about them, and we will look to incorporate it into A-SPEC. So the next forum is going to be next Thursday, 31 July, the same time. And if you haven't got your tickets for that, you can click on this particular QR code and it'll take you to the Eventbrite page to organize your tickets so that you can get your link. Our Fireside chats are going to continue. Last year, for those of you who attended A-SPEC, you would have seen it being facilitated by Shane Sewell, Surveying Coordinator at Miller & Merrigan. Shane has kindly agreed to do a Fireside chat. There's some significance to that because Shane and Miller & Merrigan had a special place in the community as he and they were involved in the delivery of the very first B-Spec submission. So we'll chat to him about the evolution from, circa 2004. So it'll be good to see what his experience has been. And then following that, for O and R specs, we will have we'll have representatives from MNG, another surveying firm based in WA, who are actually the very first firm to deliver D and R-spec data or D-spec data based in WA when we launched in WA. So we're going back to some of the organisations that have made A-SPEC successful in their states. There's a couple of more mentees that Kelly has organised. Please rate the Fireside chat with Joe and Ben. If there are other things that you would like to hear discussed, don't hesitate to contact us through the contact form or put it into the chat. If you, we've never been shy about promoting things that work and things that don't work. We are as comfortable to hear from you about things that don't work as well as things that do work. So from our continuous improvement perspective, we rely on that kind of feedback. As we mentioned at the start, we have, since COVID, everything has been online. These forums actually existed pre-COVID, and previously we would do them face-to-face. We'd run one in Victoria and we'd run one in WA, and they were great. They would go the whole day, and it was a great opportunity. As you know, it's a different experience when you have face-to-face events. So during COVID, we pivoted, and that has also been a great experience to see how we could shift from what we considered was really valuable, having face-to-face, to something that was essential by doing it online. So that's it for me. Kelly, if you have anything around the mentees or anything else, please don't hesitate to mention. But thank you everyone for your contributions, and great to see everybody that's been on. If you want to stick around, take yourself off camera or mute, I'll be around for a bit of a chat. So over to you, Kelly.
Oh, I was just typing into the chat, but I'm all good. So thank you everybody for participating today and answering the Mentees. And we look forward to catching up with you next week.